tonight's regular board meeting of the Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Harris.
Here.
Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
Division 1, Shelley Sorsable.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Dwayne Chisholm.
Here.
Attorney Markman.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Thank you. Item 3, voluntary public roll call. If any member of the public wishes to introduce themselves, please feel free to do so now.
Vincent Dino, Palmdale Water District.
Hi, Vincent.
John Lucas, Antelope Valley Mutual Group.
Hi, John.
Hi, Keith.
Hi, Keith and members of the board. This is John Joyce reporting for the Roseman News.
Thank you, John.
Jack Cephas, White Fence 3.
Welcome.
Brent Byrne, Portsville Water District. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. If there are no others, we'll move along to item 4, public comments and period open to the public. If anyone wishes to address the board on any item not on the agenda, please feel free to do so now. If there are none, we'll move along to item 5. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move we adopt the agenda.
Thank you.
This is George.
Motion.
I'm sorry, was that George?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you. Item 6, new business. It looks like we have no new business tonight. Item 7, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
This is Director Sourceable. I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
This is Director Miller. I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you. Item 8A, Finance Committee. Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes. We're going to have a presentation on item 8A1. We're going to have a presentation from our general manager, Dwayne, on our upcoming budget for 22-23.
Yes, Board Member Donato, I'd like to combine 8A and 8.2, which is the presentation of the final budget and then the possible consideration of the resolution following the presentation, if that's satisfactory. Okay, with that in mind, let's what we did. We had two, just as a way of background for the public, we had two public workshops that we discussed the budget in great detail. And we have put together for the board to consider a resolution and a final accounting of all the costs and operating expenses and revenues associated with the full budget once it's all combined together. And that's the presentation I'll be providing you tonight. You can see from page 40 of our packet, here is a summary of budget comparisons between 2021 and 2022 to 22 and 23. So it's the 2 fiscal years. As we talked about in the previous workshops, we have a reduction in the amount of water sales anticipated to be 35,000 acre feet in the next fiscal year, which corresponds to a 10% reduction in the revenue that's generated. Normally, we would be in the order of 45,000 acre feet of actual water delivered. You can see from the balance of the items that we have here as far as our water transfers exchanges went up about 6%, and then we have a new item, which is the High Desert Water Bank reimbursement of fees that Metropolitan pays. So in essence, the difference between the previous year at $31,800,000, you can see that our revenues are short by about 5% at $30,064,000 for those numbers. Now, when we look into our operating expenses, you can see that we've gone over these previously in the other workshops, but our total operating expenses here are at $33,700,000 in 21-22, and our expenses went up to $36,356,000, which is about an 8% increase, which corresponds coincidentally to about what the inflation rate is in general that we've seen in the last year or so. In addition to that, we have the non-operating revenues. Here there was a 4% increase, and you can see the numbers going from about 37 million to 38,600,000. And then our non-operating expenses have gone up, and you can see that with regards to the state water contract and the COP bond interest and fees. So you can see there we went from just short of 31 million last year to a little over 32.4 million this year, which accounts for a 5% increase. When you add them all up as far as the full budget, you can see that our revenues are approximately the same. We're within $100,000 of where we were as far as total revenues from last year to this year. But our expenses have increased by 6% to $68,775,000, which in essence leaves us with a deficit of $53,000, which in essence in a $68 million budget is pretty close to a balanced budget given where we are today. So that's the summary of our budget along with our revenues and expenses. The next slide goes over the reserve balances for the agency. As you can see here, we start off the year at about $57 million, and then we use our reserve policy requires us to have a minimum and maximum reserve level. And you can see there that for the minimum, it's a little over 65 million, and the maximum's closer to 122 million. So in round numbers, the excess cash reserves or unallocated cash reserves is between 92 and $35 million to start out from June 30th of this year. In addition to that, we add some additions and subtractions for various expenses that we've talked about. You can see here is the surplus on the state fixed cost budget of 1.5 million. The operating deficit that we have in our water rate account of a little over $1 million. We have some project carryover, the asset replacement program expenditures, the IT expenditures, our debt principal payments of a little over $5 million, and COP and bond interest fees of $3.1 million. But we do add to our reserve levels at depreciation at $8.1 million. The variable cost of the banked water, which was $4.1 million. The items that we didn't include in previous discussions include the investment income of 1.3 and our estimated capacity fees at 2.1 million. So in essence, what that does is it brings our reserve levels up when you do all the math there. In June 30th of next year, about a year from this time, we're anticipating we'll have about $158 million in reserves total between. So it'll be about $1 million higher than where we are today. So that concludes my summary of the budget and summary of the workshops that we've contained today. You have in your packet on page 38 resolution R22-15, which is the resolution that will adopt our budget for this fiscal year. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. President, Director Lang, Dwayne, I think you did a very good job with the workshops we've had. I feel very satisfied, and I feel very confident to take a positive vote on this. So I would just say thank you for a good job. The one comment I do have, and I think the board maybe at a later date, we could look at our reserve policy and see in today's environment, we're starting to get a fairly high reserve, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I think maybe we should look at that I don't know how long ago that was established, by the board, but I would feel more comfortable at some date, not anything coming up in the immediate future, but maybe this fall or sometime we would look at that and just revisit it again.
Yeah. Good idea, George.
Hi, Mr. President, this is Rob. Can I ask Dwayne a quick question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So on the variable cost of recovered bank water, that is the water we have in the ground right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what value are we giving that per acre foot?
The value is at the cost at which the water was put in. We use a first in, first out scenario. So there we have a running total. As that water gets used up, it gets recovered at the exact cost at which it went in to the system.
So I guess that's a variable cost. So what is the range between the cost of that water that comes to the 8.1 million or 4.1 million, excuse me.
4.1 million. Yes, this is some of the earlier water, so it's less than $200 an acre foot in general, because it does change based on the year and when we put the water in. But some of the other water that we're seeing today is going to be closer in the $300, $400 range as we move into the future.
And then we have a cost we leave 10% behind. Does that include the 10% behind, or is that already factored into the 4.11?
Yeah, yes, that's all factored in.
And then we have a cost when we use that water, and that brings us up to what we charge our customers about. Is that
correct? In other words, it's we used, in essence, the agency used reserves to pay for the water to put it in the groundwater bank. And when our customers use that water, we then recover those costs and return it to the reserves.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Are there any more questions for Dwayne? If not, can we have a motion on resolution number R2215?
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move approval of resolution R2215.
Thank you.
This is Director Donato. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Pierce,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes unanimously. And as Director Lane mentioned, I'd like to also congratulate our staff on the hard work that went into preparing this budget. Thank you.
Okay. Next item, or A3, the consideration of possible action on accepting and filing the check register listed July 2nd through the July 14th. This item here, for the Finance Committee, we felt that it would be good to include it so the director, all the directors can see what we're paying every month. So, Dwayne, can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. Each finance committee meeting, we provide a check register, which is a list of all the checks that are issued by the agency through our purchasing policy. And previously, we've placed this item on the consent calendar at the request of the last board meeting that this item be placed on the discussion item for the finance committee. And so how it's organized is we have our DW water contract for water deliveries. In this particular month, that's about $6.7 million. And that includes our operation, maintenance, power, recovery, and off aqueduct and conservation charges. We don't always get a monthly bill for conservation charges, so it's a little bit higher than it normally is at about $5 million. And then we have all of our monthly, what we call our monthly bills. These are the reoccurring expenses that occur each and every month, whether that be from the Edison power bills to trash to security services. The finance department or finance committee, I should say, asked us to ask staff to look into the ADT services, and we're going to do that for a future finance committee meeting. And that includes the first page 1 and page 2 of the check register with all of the monthly expenses. Then on page 3, it moves into the board-approved agreements, and this is the implementation of those board-approved agreements and the appropriate expenses that are necessary for those agreements, whether it be for a construction project or regular ongoing expenses that the agency has contracted for and are approved by the board. And we list those in that category. And then we move on to what is considered the general manager approved items. And we break that down by department from the administration to operation and maintenance, which the majority of the expenses are. And these are for the smaller items, less than $25,000, that are part of our cost of doing the operation. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have with regards to the check registry. Also, I have various staff members here available to answer specific questions that will need further elaboration.
Yeah, Director Lane, again, that's very well done. In fact, I think it's even better than what it used to be. That's broken down 7 times, some subject right there. Be no questions, but it does give the board an opportunity to look at it, get just do a little more perusal than we would otherwise. So I think that'll be an improvement and beneficial to the board members.
This is Director Donato. For the board of directors, we go through this line item every meeting we have, and was brought up to the committee I asked we could bring this to the board so the board would have a better understanding what the committee is approving, because as you can see, it's a lot of money and where this money is going. And if we see something regarding costs being utilized for buildings or anything like that, we question that during these times if we have to go ahead and build any kind of building versus just doing maintenance works until we get through this environment. So yeah, and I'm glad all of you get to see this, because it makes it a lot easier. We have tweaked this thing so many times to make it understandable and legible for the 7 directors.
Good job.
Are there any more questions for Dwayne?
Yeah, I do. Dwayne, is there more to this in your presentation, or just so they can show them like the different things, like when we pay, like the water pay Palmdale Water District, all these different things that are on here?
Yeah, I just wanted to go over the highlights of how it was.
Okay.
How it was organized and so forth, and if as the directors go through it, if they have any particular questions on an item, be happy to go through that with you.
Don't we also?
If there are no more questions,
yeah, I got one more thing I want to say. We also have separate pages for the High Desert Water Bank to show that where the money's that it's not commingling with Avek's direct general ledger. That there's a separate ledger here to look at.
good point.
It's not just a different ledger. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a different checkbook.
It's a different account. Yes.
Yes. So it's a completely different account, different checks, different account number.
Correct.
All right. Do we have a motion for Board Order 8A3?
This is Director Sorsable. I'll approve the check register.
This is Director Otto. I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes,
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you.
that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Director Donato. Item 8B, Delta Conveyance and Negotiations Committee. Director Sorsable, do you have a report?
Yes. Tonight we're taking a look at some surplus property that we're going to ask the board to approve. So I'll go ahead and let Dwayne give us our presentation, please.
Sure. Thank you, Director Sorsable. We do have our attorney, Jim Markman, on the line. He'll give the balance of the presentation, but just as a way of introduction, the agency purchased the what's known as the Healy Ranch, about 2,300 acres, fairly recently, and before the agency can utilize that property for the benefit of our ratepayers, we need to comply with the Surplus Land Act. This is a relatively new act that was just modified in 2019. And I'll not steal any of Mr. Markman's thunder, but go ahead and, Jim, give us an outline of how this how this surplus land can be utilized and the process that it takes to make it surplus.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. For the board, the Surplus Land Act has been around probably 5 or 6 years. It's recently been adjusted, and it's the child of the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and it's the purpose of it is to create affordable housing options whenever a public entity has no longer a particular use for property and is getting ready to sell it and market it. And it all works this way in every county, probably, or other even more multiple areas. HCD has a list that if you're a housing developer or someone else interested in low-cost housing, there's a list maintained by HCD for that area. There's a second list that's maintained that has the name of every public entity that could have an interest in recreational or open space opportunities. And the way this works is before you can sell property on the market to whomever you wish to sell, like the Healy Ranch, where we have the water rights separated out and Avek is keeping the water rights, 2,300 acres of property to sell. So we have to, in one way or the other, comply with this act. So there are two ways to do it. Fortunately, I think we can accomplish this the second way. But so you know what would be in for you if you just had to comply with the standard way of doing this is you would have to send a notice of availability, to a 60-day notice to all the people on those two lists who are within the area that encompasses Avek or encompasses the Healy Ranch. You would have to wait 60 days to see if any of those entities had an interest in negotiating with you in order to generate low-cost housing or recreational open space facilities.
Yeah, the question, did you say within the 8th district or just in total within the whole state?
No, this is all over the state, George. Not just this district. So, and it's becoming very, very difficult for cities and counties, particularly. So, if within that 60 days, one or two or any of these entities contact Avek and say, well, we want to make an offer and negotiate, that triggers a 90-day period in which you have to negotiate with them in good faith. So if you just have to go through the process and there's no product at the end of it, you can see you've lost 5 months from the day you decided to try to market your property to the date when you can really do it free of these encumbrances. If there's a disposition of the property that's indicated, you send it to HCD, they make findings, and then you can go forward. So, and in the event that you didn't do this properly, or that you had an opportunity to sell to one of these, let's say a low-cost housing developer, and you had certain deal points that were made, and it wasn't satisfactory to Avek, then you went out and marketed it, and HCD finds out that when the property is sold, that you marketed to who you wanted to market it to, who wasn't on the list, for the same consideration, or then there's a penalty attached to that in which the housing fund grabs 30% of the gross amount of money you sold the property for, which is a hideous penalty. That's for the first offense. If a public entity does that a second time, they risk losing 50% of the proceeds of the sale. So that's the normal process, and most people would have to go through most of the public entities. However, we have discovered in our firm, representing a couple of districts, that there's more leeway afforded to districts if you can make a finding, essentially, that even though you have no use for the property, it's surplus to your needs, it may be exempt from this whole process if there's nothing you can really do except generate funds by selling the property, so long as you pledge to use the funds for the purposes for, in Avek's case, for whatever you're supposed to do with respect to water supply. So that was surprising. It only applies to districts. We have traced it through HCD. They have approved 2 of these transactions. And what we are asking you to do tonight is to take the exemption route instead of messing with HCD entities for 5 months. And there's a resolution I drafted which finds that this is exempt surplus property of Avek. That is exempt from, it's surplus in the sense Avek doesn't want to put it to any particular use, direct use of Avek, except possibly having a well site or something like that in 2,300 acres. The rest of it would be disposed of. The resolution also says the water rights were crucial, and the water rights are going to be retained. And so basically the best thing AVIC can do is declare this as exempt surplus property, market it, take the proceeds and use the proceeds to discharge your obligations for the water supply. And so that is the resolution we presented to you tonight. If you adopt the resolution, we'll work with Holly and get that certified copy up to HCD to the person who reviews these. So this is not a blind process. We're going to ask for an approval from HCD. Once we get that approval, I feel very comfortable that the board can go forward with marketing the Healy Ranch property without a potential penalty or a violation of this Surplus Lands Act. So it's a little complicated, but that's what it is. It's just one of the really aggressive new housing laws that went into effect in California. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions that this is the proper process to take the second option versus the first?
Is that for me, Shelley?
No, that was for the rest of the board in case they had any wonders as to why you chose the second option versus the first option, which we heard you, but I just want to make sure nobody had any questions.
Everybody understands we're probably saving 5 to 7 months of time in dealing with anybody, the trust, the land trust that has already contacted, or anyone else interested in buying all or part of the Healy property. Otherwise, we'd have to do this other process potentially for half a year.
But besides, that property isn't amenable to that type of construction. People aren't going to build houses out there. They aren't going to do all those things that you said, right?
And we also note in the resolution it's a zone for heavy agriculture. It's a massive piece of property. AVEC does not have a need to use it for infrastructure or any of its purposes. So I think this is going to work. We've done it for 2 other districts, and exactly in the same way we're stating here. If we're surprised, all they can say is no, we're not buying it, and then we would probably the better part of valor would be to start the second process and hope after 60 days no one is interested in it. And frankly, I doubt anyone would be interested.
Maybe we can make a tiny profit on it, so nobody says we have to sell it for what we purchase it for. So I mean, that's the idea.
Exactly.
Doing what we're doing is potentially selling the property.
Yes, that's correct, George. That's the idea.
It's taking the property to the highest and best use overall. Also.
Yes. So we'll see who the people are who are interested in it. But as I said, I don't think a low-cost housing developer is going to propose on 2,300 acres. It's inconceivable. So this should be a very easy call for HCD so we can get this moving.
And staff would recommend approval of resolution R22-21.
Director Lane also move, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Director Donato, I'll second.
Thank you. If there are no more questions or discussion, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes.
Thank you.
Is there anything else from your report, Director Sorsabel?
No, that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 8C, Water Master Committee, Director Paris.
I'll turn that over to Matt. Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. Good evening, Board. So the first item on the agenda for the Water Master Committee has to do with the upcoming landowner representative and alternate representative for an upcoming vacancy on the Water Master Board. So next slide, Holly. Got a slide here, gives a little background. As you know, Avek is a groundwater production right holder, and we're listed on Exhibit 4 of the judgment under the overlying production rights. Therefore, Avek can vote on a landowner representative for the Water Master. Avek's production rights are currently at 4,250 acre-feet per year. That includes the recent 700 acre-feet transfer from the Healy purchase. Director Calandry, who's been on the board since its inception, is not seeking re-election, and his term expires at the end of August of this year. Therefore, the Water Master went out with a nomination process, and we've only received one nomination for landowner representative. That's his son, Brandon Calandry. And then, as you know, every 2 years we go through a process and nominate and elect the two alternate representatives for the Water Master, representing the landowner seats. So, as you know, we have two of those individuals. They're currently held by Adrian Recca and Angelica Martin. Angelica works for Tejon Ranch Corporation. And we only received those two individuals as nominations for the alternates. And we go through a voting process to determine who's the primary alternate and the secondary alternate. The highest vote getter through the election process becomes the primary, and then the other individual will become the secondary. Currently, Adrian Recca is the primary for the Water Master. The ballots are due on April 5th. So we went through this, August 5th. So we went through this with the Water Master Committee of Avek Board, and they are supportive of electing Brandon Calandry as the landowner representative and electing Adrian Recca as the primary alternate. So with that, I'd be happy to ask or answer any questions.
Well, this is Director Donato. I move that we approve 8C1, that Brandon Calandry would be the landowner's representative. Adriana Recca would be the primary, and of course the secondary would be Angelica Martin. And I think that's basically how they are set up right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Director Lane, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So staff will return this ballot with that direction. The other item we have related to Water Master is to review the agenda for tomorrow's Water Master meeting. The agenda is included in your packet. It begins on page 62. And I'd like to just highlight a couple of items that are on the agenda tomorrow as they relate to AVAC directly. The first item being a presentation on AVAC's High Desert Water Bank. As you know, that water bank will have to submit a storage agreement application to the water master, and we're scheduled to do that in late August. And we thought we'd take the opportunity for tomorrow's water master meeting to give a high-level presentation on the High Desert Water Bank. Are how the project will be operated, what the capacities are, etc. Before the water master dives into the details of the storage agreement, they will have that background information. So we're going to give that presentation. There will also be a presentation and public hearing related to the 2021 annual report for the water master. So if you're available to tune in tomorrow, it'd be good to listen to that. AVAC staff has gone through that annual report, looked at it very closely, and ensured that all of AVAC's production numbers, groundwater storage numbers are accurately represented in the report. So we're supportive of that annual report being approved tomorrow. There's also an item on the agenda to approve transfer of water rights between AVAC and LA County Waterworks. It's 2,622 acre feet. And this is related to our ongoing lease agreement that we entered into in 2015 with the county, where they can lease a portion of AVAC's production rights based on the proportionate share of imported water that they purchase from AVAC. So we went through that calculation. Like I said, it's about 2,600 acre feet of our 3,550 acre feet that they can lease from AVAC. So the water master is scheduled to approve that tomorrow. And then also just a reminder that the water master has a special meeting scheduled for August 2nd, a week from today. And this is a follow-up interview meeting to interview 3 candidates for water master administrator, which is Duke Engineering, Hallmark Group, and RGS. So we're scheduled to perform that next Tuesday at 10 a.m. And that's all I have to report unless you have any questions.
Looks like there are no questions, Matt. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Anything else, Director Paris?
No, that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Excellent. Thank you. Item 9, General Manager's Report. Dwayne?
Thank you, Board President Dias, members of the board. We have our standard state weather report that you can see, and we have no rain anticipated the next 10 days. You can see we're towards the end of the fiscal water year. Our water year ends in October. We're not expecting any significant rainfall to occur between now and then. As we look at our reservoir levels here, you can see that we've got at Lake Orville, we're at 42% of capacity, and 62% of average, and so forth. So San Luis Reservoir is also below the average level also. And this is the balance of the other reservoirs within the system. This is the graph that we like to use to demonstrate for you where we are. You can see this is the reservoir levels in Orville, and they're going to slough off into this period in here. Even though Orville levels are low compared to the average, which is up here, it's still not as bad as it could be per se, given the previous years that we've had actually lower reservoir levels. Also, the same can be true here with regards to San Luis Reservoir. We're right in this general area here. Normally we're down here, so you can see it's a lot better off, which helps a little bit towards next year's allocation that we don't have any as big a gap to fix. There's currently 670,000 acre feet of storage still available in San Luis Reservoir. As we look at our treatment processes here, you can see the Quartz Hill's going about 13 to 14 million gallons a day. We got Roseman east side and the Acton exchange with Palmdale. So we're up to about 22 million gallons a day, which is twice as much as we were just 3 or 4 months ago. And we continue to operate our water banks in such a fashion to generate about 15.9, almost 16 million gallons a day coming from that source of supply.
You go back.
Sure. Let me see if I got, whoop, did I get happened? What did I do? There it is. Make it larger. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
You bet. And as far as water banking goes, the only amount of water that we're putting in is on the east side water bank, and that's immediately recovered. So there's a net neutral coming with that water banking program. Looking at our operation and maintenance updates, we're currently about 65-70% of our capacity of our at our west side water bank. We had a Southern California Edison Public Safety Power shutdown last Friday, lasted about 36 hours. No particular operational problems here, but wanted to let you know that we did work through that. And we haven't had any heat-related mechanical failures to date. As you can imagine, the temperature and the turbidity in the aqueduct is getting much larger during the heat of the summer. There's not much movement in the canal, and the residency time is considerable. But we have been able to maintain our consistent water quality throughout these summer months so far. And then we got our annual performance testing begins next month, and we're also working on our ELAP regulations. I wanted to follow up with you on an item that we talked about. I believe Director Donato is the one that highlighted this to me with regards to what they call the Willow Rock Energy Storage Center or program. This is a advanced compressed air energy storage project, and it's utilized to generate electricity when the grid needs it the most. It acts as an alternative to battery storage. It's got a 500 megawatt capacity. It's got their own proprietary grid storage program where they're using compressed air to store, and they use energy at a low cost when it's plentiful during the middle of the day to create, and then they release that compressed air and to operate their electrical generating facilities. And that's how they generate the power, and it's a huge facility. Hydrostore is the name of the company. It's a closed loop system, so they use about 40 gallons per kilowatt hour, and initial expenditure of water about 20 million gallons. And that can come from a variety of sources when they get through and get farther along in their development. Recent updates is on July 19, the Energy Commission determined that their application for the certification was that they had their proper information and data contained, and this will allow them to begin to start the public environmental review process. So you might want to take a look at that as that comes into play. And then they also received confirmation from CalISO, which is California Independent System Operator, that they can allocate the full 500 megawatts of resource delivery power for the project. So that's a pretty big milestone also. And there's an upcoming event. It's in November on the 16th in Bakersfield. They've provided a discussion with regards to powering the California water future, and I'll make sure that Holly gets this out to everybody so you can put it on your calendars if you wish to go.
Yeah, Dwayne, this compressed air, where's it stored?
Underground. Yeah, they have a proprietary grid system that they developed that allows them to store this compressed air, and they generate the compressed air during the middle of the day when there's solar power out there and excess solar power, and then they release the compressed air in the evenings and the off-peak times or the high-peak times when solar's not available to generate electricity during those periods.
That's really interesting. Is there excavation that has to be done, or how is it?
You know, we just got a couple of press releases. Don't have any idea. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a lot more information at the November area. But since it's in our own backyard, I thought it was very brand new technology. It hasn't been. It's the first one of its kind in the United States.
Oh my! I was wondering if they took advantage of some of the old mining area. Bozeman and Mojave, and you put it in a cavern, or it's just.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's located, but it's in the Roseman Mojave area.
Better be careful where you put a shovel in.
Yeah. Okay, as far as events and schedules here, we got the Water Master Board meeting tomorrow, as Matt mentioned. And we'll follow up on the candidacies for the I should say the deadline split declaration of candidacy candidates. I can't pronounce that word for some reason. Anyway, it's for it's 8/12 on the 15th, and this is for the November election. And our my GM schedule, I'll be on vacation beginning tomorrow through the 8th of August. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Dwayne? If not, we'll move along to item 10. Are there any directors' reports? Hearing none. Item 11, do we have an attorney's report, Jim?
No, not tonight, Keith.
Thank you. Item 12, are there any requests for future agenda items? All right, we'll move along to item 14, closed session. If there's a reason to go into closed session tonight, Dwayne.
Yes, we have item B. We'll have a update from our attorney in that particular case.
Okay. Do I have a motion to go into closed session for item 14B?
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move we go into closed session.
Thank you.
This is Director Miller, a second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller, yes. Robert Paris,
Yes.
George Lane,
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. So we'll go into closed session for item 14B as soon as Holly can make that transition. Thank you.
So, Holly, you don't need to move me. I'm excused from that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Recording stopped.